All right, everyone. Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, or good afternoon, sorry. Thank you so much for joining us today. Every year, the city observes Plastic-Free July, which is a international event to bring awareness to all the different ways that we use single-use plastic in our everyday lives. So we use this opportunity to challenge ourselves to find ways to reduce either some of the big single-use plastics or find other ways to reduce plastic in our lives. Obviously this year we're in a little bit of a different situation than we normally are, which is why we're meeting virtually. And so we wanted to take a minute to talk about some of either the next steps that we can take if you've already been working on, taking your reusable bags, using your reusable water bottles, but also steps that are available to us even if we need to be using some of these single-use plastics in other areas of our life. So thank you again for joining us. We're really excited to have you here today. We do realize that there's a lot of things to care about right now, and we really appreciate you taking the time and making the space to be here and to care about this with us as well. So just quickly to introduce you to who is speaking to you today. I am Lindsay Rowland-Narodka. I am the Sustainability Manager for the City of Boca Raton. I've been with the city for about 2 years. The Office of Sustainability has been around for about 2 years. We have a sustainability action plan in place that you can access on the city's webpage, myboca.us/sustainability, to see our goals for the next 5 years to 2025, one of which is to help reduce waste produced in the city and plastic waste in particular. So, and then also with us is Leanne Welch, who I'll let introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Leanne Welch. I'm with Gumbo Limbo Nature Center in the city of Boca Raton. We're part of the city's Recreation Services Department. And just for those of you that don't know, Gumbo Limbo's mission is to inspire stewardship of coastal and marine habitats. And what does that mean? It means that we want every visitor who comes through our doors when we're open to come away with an action item, something they're going to do to make a difference. What's the one thing you're going to do to protect the oceans, the sea turtles, or the native habitats in your area? Me personally, I've been at Gumbo Limbo about 4 years, but I've always been an environmentalist. In fact, this year, as we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, I remembered being in high school celebrating the 20th anniversary of Earth Day. So you do the math. I've been dedicated to protecting the Earth for most of my life. And I just want to thank you for being here and to thank Lindsay for the invite.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanne. So just a quick point of housekeeping. We have everybody muted. If you have questions, we'll take questions at the end of the presentations. There is the chat box if you want to send us messages, or the Q&A box as well, that you can type in a question and we will address it at the end. We're also recording this, so you'll have a recording emailed to you if you registered for the event, and we'll also put it on our respective websites at the end so that you can share with friends or watch again if you so choose. So when we designed this workshop, we were running under the assumption that a lot of the people who would choose to attend would have a pretty good understanding of what the issues are and why it is that we're wanting to reduce single-use plastic. So we're going to take some kind of broad strokes of what the main issues are, as well as focus a bit on kind of some of the local issues that we're facing before getting into some of these next step actions we can take. So in terms of the issue, plastic issue, I kind of picked out 4 big things. One, there is a lot of it. Since around 1950, we've produced 8,300 million metric tons of plastic. The second thing is proper disposal depends greatly on individual behavior. And just as an example of that 8,300 million metric tons, 6,300 million metric tons roughly has been waste. The rest is still in use. Look around, there's plastic everywhere still in use. Of that plastic that's wasted, 12% has been incinerated, 79% I'm sorry? 79% has been landfilled or released into the environment, and only 9% has been recycled. The third point we'll talk about is the plastic tends to make its way into the water. And the fourth thing is it's forever. It doesn't biodegrade and become part of the environment again the way something like paper might. It breaks into tiny, tiny pieces and stays that way forever. So one thing that I always like to point out, and I want to thank the team at Gumbo Limbo for actually doing the research for this timeline. Plastic, as we use it and as we know it, is really a very recent invention and a recent tool that we use. In the lifetime of my parents, it has gone from being a novelty to being one of the major environmental issues of our time. So, you know, it wasn't until really the 1950s that it was really promoted as this disposable cure for the American housewife, right? It's easy, you don't have to wash dishes, you don't have to clean things, you just throw it away. And as soon as the 1970s, there was enough public concern about the waste that was being generated by this that the plastics industry developed the process of recycling plastic to help deal with that waste. From there, we've seen 1979 single-use plastic grocery bags being introduced. By the 1990s, this was such a problem globally that we had people come together internationally for volunteer coastal cleanups. And really, you know, before then and since then, it's really a common thing that we ask people to put volunteer labor into picking up plastic. Through the 90s and the 2000s, we started to really understand the impact that this is having on our ecosystems, particularly the marine ecosystems. In 1997, what turned out to be the first of the oceanic garbage patches was discovered. We started seeing evidence of plastics moving through food webs, through trophic transfer, basically big things eating little things that were eating the plastic. Sedimentary rocks have been discovered containing plastic, which means plastic has now been added to our geologic record. And then, you know, we expect that by 2050 that plastic will outweigh fish in the oceans, that every seabird on Earth will have ingested some plastic. And to kind of top this off, in 2018, China decided to stop importing plastic for recycling. So we had our recycling systems thrown kind of into a bit of chaos as we had to search and find new markets to take this material. So on that note, I just want to take a minute to say a little something about recycling. So the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle is in order of importance. That's a to-do list. The first thing is reduce, then reuse, then recycle. So recycling is kind of the last of your choices. Now, I will say recycling is super important. And if you have something that needs to be disposed of and it can be recycled, absolutely you should be recycling. But recycling is not a perfect solution. It is not the thing that solves the problem. For one, recycling is dependent on a market for the material, as we saw when China started taking plastic. If there isn't someone willing to buy it, it's not getting recycled. We as consumers can help promote those markets by looking for products that are made with post-consumer recycled material. Recycling is also dependent on infrastructure. Communities like Boca Raton that have great infrastructure for curbside pickup have less issues with this than other parts of the country or other parts of the world where that infrastructure may not exist. And recycling is heavily dependent on individual behavior, which is going to respond to things like convenience and also safety, as we're seeing now as well. So recycling is great and everyone should absolutely do it, but what we're going to talk about today is ways that we can reduce the need to create materials for recycling as well. And to Leanne.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. So first, I just want to clear up a myth. Most of the litter on the beaches and in the ocean, it comes from inland sources. And like the slide says, whether you mean to litter or not, everything we throw away, there's a good chance it could make it into the sea. So what we're looking at here, it looks like a big trash pile. It's actually the result of our hardworking Recreation Services Department beach rakers. So every morning they go out and they clean the beaches. We're very fortunate to, well, it's a double-edged sword, but our beautiful clean beaches do not come that way naturally. They're cleaned almost every morning by our team members out there. So what you're looking at is the sargassum, the seaweed, everything left over from last night's high tide. And in that is a ton of plastic. And you can see in there, it's just littered with pieces. And these were not plastic pieces that were left on the beach. This is what came in with the high tide previous to that. So you can see pieces of bucket tops, shoes, toys, a lot of bottle caps, toothbrushes, balloons. None of this was left on the beach. So all of this came into the ocean. And then going to our next slide, the question is, how did it get there? We aren't, there's laws against dumping plastic, dumping anything overboard from your container ships, from your cruise ships, from your own pleasure boat. Can we go to the next slide, Lindsay? Trying, there it is. So how did it get there? If you live on the coast, all waterways lead to the ocean. If you don't live on the coast, there's a good chance all the waterways lead to a lake or eventually to a river or a stream that eventually leads to the ocean. How does it get there? Some of it's intentional, some of it's littering, some of it's not caring. Some of it gets blown around. It gets blown out of your recycling bin. It gets blown off the garbage truck or out of the recycling truck. People still, even though we know about the dangers, intentionally release balloons for one reason or another. And all of it, just about all of it, winds up in the ocean eventually. So think back if you've ever participated in a beach cleanup, especially here in the city of Boca. Gumbo Limbo facilitates hundreds of beach cleanups every year when we're open. And what we tell people they need to be looking for is teeny tiny pieces of plastic, and we call it turtle trash. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But they're microplastics basically. So it's stuff that was in the ocean, it's broken down. Think about the beautiful tiny pieces you like to pick up, the beach glass. Same thing, only that's a treasure. And we all want to keep it for collected, make pretty jewelry. But when you go to our beaches, most beaches nowadays, you're not seeing big pieces of trash. It's teeny tiny, and you've got to look hard. So on the next slide, I'll show you how hard you may have to look to find it. So a while back, my family and I were on vacation on a beautiful, isolated beach. There was hardly anyone out there. And that's actually my daughter who was looking down, and I was like, what on earth is she looking at? And when you look at this picture, you just see a beautiful, pristine beach. But when we looked closer, there it is. There's the ring from the top of a bottle cap that it's there. It's everywhere. And every corner of the world, there's plastic on the beaches. I mean, I know you've all seen the pictures of those just isolated, uninhabited islands in the Pacific Ocean, just absolutely littered with plastic debris. And to go a little deeper into this, we were trying to figure out why is this such a problem? Why are animals eating this? And you can go to the next slide. And what we're finding is that the plastic, as it's out there in the ocean, it's collecting algae, it's collecting microfilms of stuff that is good to eat for fish and birds and even sea turtle hatchlings. And so to them, it looks and it smells like food, and they don't really know a difference. So why is the issue so personal to us at Gumbo Limbo? Well, every summer, we have thousands of sea turtle nests that are laid on our beaches, all up and down the east coast of Florida, and well, both coasts of Florida, actually. And sea turtle hatchlings they're born with all the knowledge they need to be a sea turtle. There's no parental care. They come out of their nests and they hit the ocean. They run to the ocean, and they're going to swim in a frenzied manner for 24 to 48 hours until they hit the Sargasso Sea, the sargassum mats that float around in the North Atlantic gyres. And if you're a fisherman, or if you've been fishing, or if you've been out on boats, you've seen these huge floating mats of seaweed. And these turtles, they're going to ride that nursery for a couple years, and it has everything they need to survive. If there's a fish that's a hungry fish on the bottom that's hunting them, they're going to climb on top of that seaweed and they're going to be safe. And if they look up and there's a bird, a hungry bird that's hunting them, they're going to dive underneath that sargassum, and that's going to protect them there. It's also home for all the things they like to eat, little tiny crabs, little tiny shrimp and fish, and they are going to pretty much put anything that can fit in their mouth while they're out there. Unfortunately, this floating mat is also a magnet for tons and tons of plastic pieces. And they eat a lot of plastic as well. And it's not healthy for them. Obviously, there's no nutritional value in it, and it makes them feel full. And as a result, many times they stop eating or they become impacted and they can't eat anymore. They become weak and unable to swim on their own. And when this happens, they may be pushed back to shore by the wind and the seas. And we call these turtles washbacks. So you can go to the next slide. So Gumbo Limbo, we may see, depending on the storm season, depending on the weather, hundreds to sometimes thousands of these washback turtles. Did you go to the next slide? I don't see it. Ah, there it is. So washback turtles are anything bigger than a hatchling, basically, between hatchling size to a yearling, 1 or 2 years old. And so they come to us, they're generally very sick, they're fatigued, very weak. Some of them can't even swim. So the first thing we do is we rehydrate them. We give them IV fluids, that usually perks them up. If they still can't swim, we keep them on damp towels, or we've actually, well, our amazing rehab team has created these little floating hammocks that they can just sit in the water until they're strong enough to swim. When they get stronger, we give them good food, no plastic, and until we're confident, our vet is confident that they're gonna make it on their own, and then they get a free boat ride back out to the sargassum where they can try again. And hopefully, once we've had them for, I mean, sometimes they're with us for a week or two, sometimes are many months. And unfortunately, many of them are too weak to save and they die in our care. And when a turtle dies, we perform a necropsy, and basically that's an animal autopsy. So I'm gonna warn you, the next slide's a little bit graphic, but it's not too bad. So you can go ahead to the next slide. And what we're seeing on these necropsies is that 100% of the washback turtles that come to us. You switch the slide? It's taking forever.
There's a delay. I don't know why there's a delay. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Anyway, 100%. There you go. So I said it's a little graphic. 100% of these turtles that are coming to us and dying in our care do have plastic in their GI tract, so in their stomach, in their intestines. And you can see this turtle here. I mean, it's just absolutely, completely impacted with tiny plastic pieces. And what you see on the left-hand slide next to the turtle itself were over 100 tiny pieces of plastic. I mean, most of it's just scraps. There's some threads in there, a little piece of monofilament. There's a piece of a balloon. This was all out in the sargassum. The turtle didn't know any better and he just ate it. So funny story about this picture, we posted it without the intestines, just the picture of the turtle and the plastic. And this was last year, it absolutely went viral. It was picked up all over the world. You may have seen it. I mean, every national, international news, all over the world. We estimate at the end, after a month or so, that this picture was seen by over 300 million people. And just to put that in perspective, that is the population of this country. So, but that's all over the world. So what was the impact of this photo? I'm not sure. Hopefully it inspired quite a few people to make a difference. And this was right around the same time as everyone was saying, skip the straw. So obviously this turtle was too small to eat straws, but if a straw was broken up into microplastic pieces, that could have made the difference. But like I said, every single washback turtle we get at Gumbo Limbo has eaten plastic. So this is why it's personal to us. This is every single day. And frankly, it's exhausting. It really is. You can go to the next slide. For a bit of good news, it's not all bad news. And I will tell you, most of the turtles that come into our rehabilitation facility every year, they do wind up passing plastic, pooping it out. Some of the bigger turtles, it's handfuls of plastic pieces that, but they're bigger animals, and maybe it wouldn't have impacted them. So this is Mayfly. Mayfly came to us earlier this year in March, and she's a hawksbill turtle, which are one of the rarer turtles that we don't generally see on our beaches. We do see them in our waters quite a bit, but they don't necessarily nest on our beaches. She came to us, she was floating, lethargic, very, very, very weak. Like most turtles, we rehydrated her and got some good food in her system, got things moving again, and she started passing pieces of plastic. So what you see on the right-hand side of the slide is all the plastic pieces, and that's a centimeter scale, that came out of Mayfly's digestive system. Oh, well over 100 pieces of plastic. She was a little bigger. She was about this big, so maybe between 1 and 2 years old. So it wasn't quite the tiny palm-sized washbacks that we usually see. But the good news, you can go to the next slide, is after 3 months in our care, Mayfly was well enough, eating, very swimming strong and looking good. And we were able to partner with some researchers with the US Geological Service. And she hitched a ride on their boat and was successfully released in the clean, clear waters of Dry Tortugas National Park. She swam away quickly, so we're hopeful, and she does have little tags on her flippers, so if anyone finds her again, we'd be curious to see where she wound up. But the Dry Tortugas is just, it's known as a nursery site, and so like I said, it's not all bad news. But what we're seeing is all of our turtles are eating plastic. And you can go to the next slide. It's not just turtles. We had a fish last year. I don't know if you saw it on our social media, but the fish had been captured. Kirby, our porcupine fish, had been captured in the wild and had been with us over a year and started getting sick. We did an x-ray and realized that before she came to us, she had ingested a hook with a lot of monofilament line on it. We were able to perform a successful surgery, and a year later, she's one of our most popular residents in our deep reef tank. So she's got quite the story to tell. But at Gumbo Limbo, we are, all of us, our visitors, our volunteers, our team members, we're just, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see the same story over and over and over. So we've made changes that we can. We encourage everyone to bring their own water bottle when they do visit. We've got water bottle filling stations throughout Gumbo Limbo. Our gift store focuses on sustainable, reusable ways to not use plastic in your lives. And we've gone one more step further, so you can go to the next slide. And we've actually tried to make something good out of all those tiny pieces of plastic we're pulling out of these washback turtles that have died in our care. So this is a green turtle washback, and we partnered with Ben Hicks, who is a local photographer, to make a statement. And so you see the actual picture of the turtle. Now, unfortunately, this turtle did die in our care, and the turtle-shaped outline is all of the pieces of plastic that were inside that turtle. So Ben painstakingly recreated the outline of the turtle just to put it in comparison to how much is in this tiny little animal, and then spelled out the word refuse with other microplastic pieces that we're finding in our animals. So we're thinking about a fourth R. So instead of reduce, reuse, recycle, let's start with refuse, and let's refuse single-use plastics. And then just the final slide. I know with those of you that have called in, I'm preaching to the choir here, but you know, it's a good reminder. What can you do? And sometimes the simplest act can have the biggest impact. And we do that, you know, by talking to you and showing you these pictures and recording this webinar. Hopefully you'll share it with someone else. You'll share it with someone in your circle. And these are all easily things that you can do easily in your lives, and knowing many of you that have called in, these are things you're doing anyway. So let's make that circle of influence just one step bigger, and instead of reduce, reuse, recycle, let's refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, because honestly there's some ways plastic is it's unavoidable. And I look at our rehab facility. I mean, we couldn't do what we do if we didn't have plastic IV bags and, plastic tubing and syringes to save the animals' lives. But some of the other things aren't generally necessary in your life. Anyway, with that, I'm going to thank you for your time and your attention and turn it back over to Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Leanne. It's get a little worked up when you talk about the washback turtle.
I know, sorry.
I was like, oh, on camera. I can't tear up. But that's so powerful and it's so personal. And really, one of the first things that you can do with any of these issues is to start to learn about the problem a little bit more and educate yourself. And even Leanne and I will read new things and we'll find new ways that plastic is impacting the environment and new things that we can do. So learning about the problem is really the first step. And I wanted to plug this WLRN documentary as well, Troubled Waters, A Turtle's Tale, which if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, heavily features our amazing Gumbo Limbo Nature Center and the Turtle Hospital there, and goes over a lot of the issues that are facing turtles today, plastics included, and really puts it in perspective of the turtles being the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. Like they're letting us know what the problems are, and they're bigger than that as well. The two other things that we can do is make personal changes and also support systemic changes. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those things look like. I went backwards. There we go. So the personal changes, clean your own routine first, right? We have to clean up our own homes before we can go out. And these personal choices are a big part of it as well. Like systemically, we need to make changes. As Leanne says, so much plastic is unavoidable, but there are things that we can do. So Plastic Free July really wants people to focus on these ways that we touch plastic every day and unnecessary ways and the changes that we can make. And it's likely that many of you who are calling in or watching the recording are already using reusable bags and skipping the straw and using reusable water bottles. And if you're not, these are really great places to start. One point we wanted to draw attention to, though, is how can we safely use these reusable items during the time of COVID-19. So we've been working for years now on really advocating for reducing these single-use plastics. And then over the last few months, we've seen a lot more use of them as a health and safety precaution. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what COVID-19 and single-use plastics mean. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a statement released by over 100 health experts, including virologists and immunologists, who addressed the safety of reusable items versus single-use plastic. And this was in a lot of ways specific to things like grocery bags and also things like reusable tableware at restaurants. And what they said is that given what we understand now about the virus and how it's more likely than not spread heavily by touching surfaces, both products, whether they're reusable or disposable, carry a similarly low risk of passing the disease. But another thing to point out is just that with disposable items, there's no guarantee that they're sterile either. So if the concern is touching something and then someone else touching it, you're going to face the same concerns with a plastic fork at a restaurant as a reusable fork at a restaurant. And the proper cleaning practices that our restaurants are already putting into place because of state laws should be effective in removing the virus and preventing that spread. For reusable items where you're bringing your own containers, like your own coffee mug, this is something that right now a lot of places aren't allowing that to be done. But with protocols that would allow things to be filled without having to pass the cups back and forth, without having to have that be handled by multiple people, there are safe ways that this can be done. And I'll have to provide the link later to the statement, but there are safe ways with some care to use reusable safely. And certainly if it's something that's being washed in a commercial setting, it's as safe as disposables, or as likely to be as safe as disposables. But for some tips during COVID-19, if you are wanting to reduce your waste and finding a little bit harder, some things that we can do. One is using a reusable mask. Something that I'm sure all of us have noticed is that we've seen an increase in litter of things like gloves and disposable masks in the streets, in parking lots, everywhere we go. And so that is, a response to just there being more disposable things around, as well as probably some fear and concern of people of handling these things after they've been worn and they've been used. But it's creating a litter issue. So cloth masks have been shown to be effective at preventing yourself from spreading the disease if you have it, spreading the virus. And so cloth masks can be easily washed and reused rather than disposed of. Trying to reduce the use of gloves. In most cases, they're not recommended. They're not more effective than washing your hands with soap and water or using a hand sanitizer. So in cases where you can not use gloves, that would be the better choice. And certainly with both, if you feel more secure with gloves, if you choose to use them, or a disposable mask, just making sure that they're being removed properly and disposed of properly. Another thing that has probably increased waste for all of us is takeout. We're not sitting in restaurants as much as we used to. Now that they're open, maybe a little bit more, but certainly at the beginning, we were trying to support our local businesses and our local restaurants by ordering more takeout than we probably did before. It's hard to get away from disposable items when you're getting food from somewhere and bringing it home. But there are small things that we can do, such as requesting no extras. If you're going to be eating at home, you have your own napkins, you have your own cutlery, so you can request to not have those. And a lot of the apps where you can order it have an option to opt out or opt in. Some of them are different. You can also support restaurants that you know are doing their best to provide sustainable materials for their takeout containers, such as those that are participating in the Coastal Connection restaurant program that the city has. Grocery bags beyond the bag, right? So we're trying to give you more things to do, and we're also recognizing that we may need to skip over this stuff in some places, but there are ways that you can continue to reuse your reusable bags. Not all grocery stores are letting you bring them in to be packed by their checkers. Some may let you pack them yourselves. And then Leanne and I were laughing about ourselves a couple days ago because we're the type of people who will have them just put our groceries straight into the cart and we'll pack them ourselves in our car. So it's something that can be done, that can be supported to continue using those. Coffee cups, things like that. You can't refill your own cup at these coffee shops anymore. You can make your own at home. A lot of us are working from home more often, so we're making our coffee at home rather than picking it up on the way to work anyway. And then if you want to continue supporting your local coffee shop, you can consider buying gift cards and things to use for later, while still reducing your waste now. And then most importantly, I want to just remind everyone to be patient and kind with yourself as well as others. It's a stressful time. We're picking up kind of new behaviors, new practices, and we're all figuring it out. So if you've been someone who's been committed to low waste and you find yourself in situations where you're needing to take a bag or you're ending up with a plastic container of food, don't beat yourself up too much about it. Do your best. And be kind and patient with the people you're interacting with too, who may be struggling to find ways to support your lowest waste choices as well. But we can do it. So our next steps after these first ones is to start thinking beyond the water bottle and beyond the straw and beyond the grocery bag. And what else can we do to reduce waste? And a lot of these things will be more in control of our own homes and won't be as impacted by our safety and health concerns related to COVID-19. So to understand what we can maybe reduce in our own homes, we first need to look at what it is we're producing. So let's take a deep dive into our recycle bins and start cleaning those out. Like I said, if you have to dispose of something and it can be recycled, you should recycle it. But we can also look at what we're recycling and find ways to reduce those as well. So in order to know what to reduce, we need to know what we're producing. So first step would be to do a waste audit. There's lots of instructions online. You can find at sites like Earth 911 or the EPA on how to do a very simple and quick home audit. But the simplest thing to do is just lay out a tarp and dump your trash bins on it before you put it out for collection. Sort everything out into categories and take a look. Are there products in there that you could buy with different packaging? Are there things that you could reduce? You know, if you see in your trash can that there's all types of wrappers of little chip bags or granola bars or cookie wrappers, is that something you could buy a larger bag and portion out into reusable containers? Could you make them yourself rather than buying them packaged? That's a no for me, but other people are better bakers than I am. Can things be recycled that aren't going in your recycle bin? And if they can't be recycled curbside, is there some place where you can take them to be recycled? Can something be composted? And there's lots of resources available for helping figure this out as well. The city's website has instructions for a very simple composting system that I've been using at my house, and it's been working great, that was used at the Boca Raton Community Garden. The Solid Waste Authority has a waste disposal guide on their site, so you can type in whatever it is you're looking for, and they can tell you with them where it can be disposed. There's also sites, I mentioned Earth 911, that has a directory to help you find recyclers for all sorts of things as well. Don't forget that your grocery stores and other retailers often have bins that will take back some of the things that you get from them, your produce trays, your plastic bags. And just a reminder, when you're done with your audit and you're packing everything back up to throw it away, for the safety of our sanitation workers, make sure all the trash is inside a bag and tied, but no bags in the recycle bins. Plastic bags and recycle bins is a major source of contamination, causes a lot of trouble at the sorting facilities. So just make sure that those are cleaned and loose in your blue and yellow bins. So now that we've taken a look at our recycle bins, I want to talk a little bit about some of the common areas where we're seeing a lot of waste produced. So cleaning supplies is a big one. Those tend to come in plastic bottles. One way that you can reduce this is by doing a few DIY cleaning supplies. Now, high-touch public surfaces aside, most things can be cleaned with some sort of combination of soap, baking soda, vinegar, lemon, and water. Inside your home, these things can clean an awful lot. There's tons of resources online, many blogs that will give you any number of recipes for you to find something that works, that you like the smell of, that you like the feel of, that works with your countertop types in your home. I wanted to share one that works for me. I like the very simple recipes. This is the countertop cleaner that I use at home. It's just warm water, Castile soap, and lemon essential oil just for scent. So that's optional. Keeping it simple means that I always have the ingredients on hand. I can mix them up whenever I'm out, and it's just really super easy. I also say use rags instead of paper towels. Paper towels aren't plastic. They do tend to come wrapped in plastic, but this helps save you a little bit of money and get those paper towels out of your trash as well. So cloth from old clothes or microfiber cloths work really well for that. The bathroom is another place that we tend to fill up with lots and lots of little tiny bottles of things, and it's kind of a behemoth to tackle to reduce plastic here. And it's something that we can really think about and do sort of phased in. So there's lots of products that we can replace with things that have replaceable parts. Razors, instead of the plastic entire razor that's disposable, get ones that have changeable heads, or get a safety razor where you're just changing out the razor blade. Some toothbrushes have heads that you can interchange so that you're using the same handle over and over again and just changing out the bristles. There are non-plastic alternatives to a lot of products. You can get bamboo brushes, bamboo toothbrushes, loofahs made out of natural fibers that allow you to use the same products, but just with different materials. And there's lots of options for products with less packaging. Bar soaps rather than hand soap in a plastic bottle, shampoo bars. You can find products that are refillable. There's some companies that will do refillable shampoos, conditioners, deodorants, where either you're getting glass bottles that can be recycled, or you're sending bottles back and getting back and forth refilled. Toothpaste tablets is another one that is available rather than the toothpaste tubes, which can be very hard to recycle. Like with cleaning supplies, there is no shortage of recipes online for DIY cosmetics. People have different levels of success with those, and I encourage you to try a few out, see if you can find something that works for you. One recipe that I use in my house is foaming hand soap. Again, it's been great during the pandemic because when all the aisles got cleared of the hand soap bottles, I had a year's supply still of soap in my house. The foaming hand soap can be made, again, with warm water and Castile soap, a little bit of coconut oil, and a little bit of essential oil for whatever scent that you want to give it in a foaming hand soap container. And it works great. And again, one big bottle of Castile soap lasts me for about a year. So that is a plastic bottle, but it's just the one. And we never ran out. The kitchen is another place that we can focus. And there's lots of tips for reducing plastic here as well. A lot of our food, even our produce, comes wrapped in plastic, and sometimes we can get it loose, and sometimes it's really hard to find alternatives for that. But that plastic film can be collected and returned to recycle bins at your retailers. So the bins that you take plastic bags to can take other types of plastic film as well, but it doesn't go in the recycle bins. You can find reusable versions of disposable containers. So one switch that we've done in our kitchen over the last couple of years is all of our plastic food containers, as they've worn out, have been replaced with glass versions that will last us the rest of our lives as long as we don't drop them. Reuse jars. This is a big source of sometimes very high quality glass containers in old jars. Things like sauces and jams get filled into the jars when they're hot. So that is a glass that's going to withstand a lot of heat. And I even do some freezing in glass jars, so that's been trial by error in how much you can fill them. But in our house, my husband, first of all, gets annoyed with me at the number of jars that we sometimes collect. But I buy things like the jam that we buy, I buy explicitly because I like the quality and the shape of the jar for reusing, for food storage, and for freezing, and for drinking out of sometimes. You can pick things like silicone lids to use instead of plastic wrap, so that containing and keeping food is one area where we tend to use a lot of plastic. Choosing containers that are reusable or easily recyclable. So jars you can reuse, picking metal over glass because there's a better market for it and it's easier to recycle, and buying bulk whenever possible. Now, again, right now, these suggestions for buying bulk might be more for the future than for right now, where bulk is not as easily available because of health and safety concerns. But when I first started looking into this, one of the things that was very foreign to me was how you do the bulk aisle with your own containers, particularly if you're bringing in glass or something that's heavy. It's going to weigh a lot on the scale, and you're basically paying for the weight of your own container. So the way to do this is to know what the tare weight of your container is, and you can buy canvas bags that have the tare weight sewn on them to use for bulk bins. But if you're bringing in your own containers, the thing to do is to take it to the customer service desk when you come in to have it weighed. And this is also a really great opportunity to interact with the staff at the store to let them know what you're doing with the containers and to make that a little bit easier than when you're checking out. When you're checking out, be aware that not a lot of people do this. You may be the first person your cashier has ever encountered who brought in a glass jar to fill with rice. So be patient and be polite. Let them know ahead of time what it is you're doing, and that you have the tare weight, and give them the opportunity to maybe call over a manager if they need help doing it the first time. If we're patient and polite, it becomes more normal. The stores we go to all the time know that we're doing it, and it becomes easier to do. But again, this may have to wait. I don't know that it's that welcome at the moment. Unexpected plastic pollution. So we talk a lot about these big personal things that are plastic products that we're choosing to use. There are ways that plastic pollution happens that we're not thinking about, that we didn't necessarily understand a few years ago was happening. And one of the things that struck us that was in the news recently that you may have seen were these headlines about plastic rain. Plastic rain is the new acid rain. And what these headlines are based on is a study that was done in some of the Western national parks. So these remote areas that studied plastic that was coming out of the air, being plastic deposition, so deposit out of the air or out of the rain, and finding surprisingly large quantities of microplastics in these very remote places. And the source of those are essentially synthetic materials. And while some of it might be coming from the parks themselves, because our tech gear that we're hiking in and our tents and tarps are plastic, a lot of it is coming from our everyday clothing that we're wearing. Synthetic fibers, our tech fibers, our athleisure that we're all living in now that we're working from home for the most part, all have these little plastic fibers in them, and they're getting shed as we wear them, they're getting shed as we wash them. This is something that is fairly new that we're understanding over the last couple of years. And there are some things that we can do about it. One of the things I have listed here is change the way that we purchase our clothing. So a big change that I personally have made over the last few years, and I know a lot of other people have done too, is buying more secondhand clothing. And we're very lucky in Boca Raton that we have a lot of lovely consignment stores with very high quality clothes in them. And even our thrift stores tend to have very high quality pieces in it. So you can dress very well secondhand. There's also a lot of online resources, online consignment stores and clothing shop swaps that you can use. You can buy sustainable fashion, natural fibers, but even natural fibers have an environmental cost as well. Cotton is very water intensive, and the dyeing process is a major source of industrial water pollution globally. So wearing clothes for longer, giving them a longer life, helps you spread out that environmental impact over a longer period of time and reduce some of the market incentive for, the fast fashion, the fast turnaround, the disposable clothing. One very promising thing is you can change the way you wash your clothes. There's a lot of evidence that says that these fibers shed less if you're washing in cold water or on shorter cycles. And the good news is that also saves you money on your water and your electric bills. And most modern detergents are formulated so that they work well in cold water anyway, so you don't really need to wash your clothes on warm water to get them warm. You can recycle your textiles. There's recycle bins at a lot of times at schools and places like that as a fundraising effort for them. A lot of your local thrift shops will recycle anything they can't resell. And you can support innovations. You can support companies that are finding ways to mitigate the impact of their synthetic fibers and their tech fibers as well. Systemic change is another big topic. We talk a lot about grassroots change, and that's what a lot of you have been doing, and it works. It really does. The consumer demand for less plastic has resulted in a lot of big companies making major changes to their products to reduce the amount of plastic that is part of them. It's also driven more of this top-down approach as well, as local governments and even state and federal governments around the world have seen the concern that their communities have for plastic pollution and have taken some action. Here in the city of Boca Raton, our council has supported reducing plastic waste through resolutions that commit us to reducing less waste ourselves, as well as strongly encouraging the Florida the Florida state government to address the environmental impacts of single-use plastics by either regulating them themselves or removing the preemptions to allow local governments to pass regulations. And we're also seeing more technology and advancements in the ways plastics are made, the ways they decompose, to make it a little bit more sustainable. There's a lot to learn on this topic, and a lot of people who have done a lot more work and understand it a lot better than me, and you can find tons of books and resources at the Boca Raton Public Library. And online, there's countless blogs of people who are doing a really wonderful job on their personal journeys for reducing waste, and I highly recommend checking these out of the library. And just kind of a final reminder before we go to your questions, perfection is not the goal here. None of us can be perfect at this all the time. We can do our best. and we can make small changes to educate ourselves more and to make it a little bit better. And this is true for almost any sustainable behavior that we can talk about, whether it's driving, whether it's eating less meat, whether it's turning your lights off. Just do what you can. The goal is not to have a small number of people doing this perfectly. It's to have everyone trying just a little bit. So with that, I will stop, and we have a little bit of time for questions. If anyone has anything to ask, go ahead and type it into the chat box, and we will do our best to address.
Lindsay, I think we've got some questions in the questions pane.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can pop that out. There we go. So we have one question. It says, as part of the city's implementations of COVID guidelines for to-go items, in addition to bringing your own coffee cup, can we also include normalization and tips for bringing your own containers for packing the food in? So yeah, as we're reopening, we're having conversations about ways that we can continue to educate about best practices for this. We can't necessarily dictate what the businesses are doing. It's something that, there's a lot of concern for health and safety, and we want to make sure that we're doing what's best for the community. But we will definitely provide resources to how to safely implement reuse in these cases. And then the other question was, can you provide some places within Boca or close by where we could do bulk buying? I think most of the local grocery stores have bulk bins. Most of the ones that I've been in do.
It's not right now.
Not right now.
That's the only problem.
Right. But once we get to a point where it's safe to kind of allow that again, I think most of the local grocery stores offer it to some extent. And those are the only questions I see. Do you see any more?
Nope, I don't think there's anything in the chat either.
Okay. So I know we covered a lot, and I know I have a tendency to talk quickly. But we do have a few more minutes. And yes, the presentation will be available after the webinar. If you registered, we'll email it to you, and we'll also post it on the website, probably on the sustainability page. So this will be available at some other time, and please share it with anyone you think would be interested.
Oh, and I see Susan says Delray Whole Foods still has some bulk bins available. So that's good to know. Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, thanks. The one here probably does too then. I'd imagine something like that would be company policy. I don't know.
That's good. Maybe they're opening them back up.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as, COVID-19 goes, you have to do what you're comfortable with. And there's ways to do things to make it more safe, but everyone has their own level of comfort with things as well.
Well, and I think it's important to remember this is not forever. COVID-19 eventually, at some point in the future, we'll have a vaccine. Things will be back to somewhat normal, but plastic, unfortunately, is forever. So yes, now's maybe a good time to start thinking about those changes, changes that we can all make in our personal lives so that we're ready.
Good point. Absolutely. Yes. And that's again, the beyond the bag. Do what you can, and some of that things that you can might be going beyond those initial first steps too, and looking at your own house and some of your other ways that you can reduce that plastic input. And awesome. If there's nothing else, I guess we'll say goodbye. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it. And feel free to contact either Leanne or I. And stay in touch with the city via social media and the website. All right.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, you want me to end the webinar?
Yes, please.
Yeah.